Let me talk about them not ever testing these vaccines. The reason they say they don't is because of ethics, right? That we can't go ahead and test this because if we give it to people who don't have the virus, then that is actually not fair. That's not ethical. Is that correct? Is that why they don't do it?
It's one argument for the vaxxed versus unvaxxed study, but again, it's that simple safety testing is done. Is the garbage that's in that shot I just showed you, is horse viruses, bird viruses, other people's human fetal tissue. You've got cancer-causing fetal tissue from these cell lines, MRC5, these aborted fetuses and things like that. You've got cancer-causing mouse, monkey, bird retroviruses. That's not tested. That's not safe. It's not just the vaxxed, unvaxxed study, but clear that not even safety studies, they're not cleaned up of the garbage. That's the problem. People think a vaccine, and I did all the way until 2014. Our first book, my major emphasis of our paper was the contaminated blood supply. I'm not the scientist who wrote the opinion paper that said the most likely way mouse viruses got into humans was vaccines, because they're adventitious agents. The government has admitted that since 1995. So again, we're talking apples and oranges. It's not, you don't have an attenuated enterovirus. You don't have a purified coronavirus in saline, or a piece of purified coronavirus, an attenuated, a weakened coronavirus in saline that you're exposing by a natural route of infection. You're injecting a needle full of other viruses. God only knows what's happening, the cytokine storm they drive. And that's the point. They don't want to know because they've never done the testing. And of course, the unvaccinated study, there's nothing unethical at all. Measles is not a deadly infection to a healthy 5-year-old child. That's what I had. And I have lifelong immunity. I'll never get shingles unless they stress me out, because I got a natural chickenpox infection. These are harmless childhood diseases in healthy people. We used to have chickenpox parties. We used to have measles party, so the whole family gets it. That's what the herd immunity would be in coronavirus. We should be in families, having the healthy people out, protecting the sickest, the vulnerable, with the natural product therapies, the vitamin C, the healthy living, the clean food. That's the simple definition. And the history really does approve all of it. And it's not me talking. It's Dr. Suzanne Humphries, who goes into a great deal about, the whole polio, the whole measles vaccination. You can chart it. You can see her book, Dissolving Illusions, another good book. You can see Dr. Jack Lyons Weiler's book, Profits versus Cures. The clinical data support that these vaccines are, in fact, killing millions with cancers they would otherwise never get. And because of the immune dysregulation. That was my last job at the National Cancer Institute, which from in 1999 to 2001, HIV-associated cancers, other viruses that take hold and that are activated in the immune system when you have an HIV infection that goes unchecked. So you keep it silent. We didn't vaccinate HIV-infected people until 2011 with any vaccine. Influenza, anything else. Why? Because you don't want immune activation. You don't want them to wake up the HIV infection and spread it through the white blood cells. That will cause AIDS. That's what we learned. That's the point. Why did we start vaccinating again in 2011? Why are we publishing papers like measles infection when it's not a natural infection at all? So we're not using, just like they didn't do in the validation study, they're not using the same patients. as we found in our original studies, the virus in. Just like they're not using me. Use me. I got a natural measles infection.
Right.
And then we'll show if I'm allergic. Let's look at the immune system. There are large unvaccinated populations, and I believe it was the Mawson study that showed some natural populations in a DTaP experiment, the unvaccinated versus the vaccinated. And with DTaP shots, cause of all death was 5 times more in the vaccinated. So these studies really must be done, and you can do them. There are many people like me walking around with natural chickenpox infections. And in fact, in Ronald Goldman's studies with chickenpox, with the data in a community in Northern California, proved that the vaccine doesn't work, that it doesn't give a memory response. So I use simple terms, doesn't work, because the whole idea is to protect you from disease, or protect you from disease development, or ameliorate the disease, make it less. Flu vaccines don't make disease less. You're giving them to immune-compromised elderly with with all that garbage in them. I just showed you MMR, but there's similar garbage in flu vaccination. And again, they're never tested because they don't want you to know that. But the data support clearly that the populations who are getting vaccinated had a greater susceptibility to COVID-19, to coronavirus infection, and then disease development from that, because the point of a vaccine is to turn on the fire, turn on inflammation, stimulate your B cells, T cells, macrophage, dendritic cells to provide the immune response. And that's the flame, the same signature that is the signature of COVID-19. So why would you turn on the flame in the susceptible? And everybody reports. I mean, our friends say, oh, I never get a flu vaccine again because the last time I got one, I was so sick. You know, that happened to my mother in 2012, and it ultimately killed her. She developed, the flu vaccine and the Prevnar vaccine she was given because she didn't want to ask me because I just got out of jail. Killed her ultimately. Yeah. Afibrillation. And this is what we're seeing in COVID. So people that are dying are being called COVID, and they're not dying from the coronavirus. They're dying from the vaccination. And I'll stand by that, and I could prove it if they'd ever let anybody do the study.